Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length, archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the brewangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to episode 3. Scott, how you doing?
Doing well today. Fred, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Cheers. It definitely feels like summer is rolling in. We've got a few things to get through here in the introduction. As normal, we'll go through some updates for everybody. We'll give the shout outs to the Brewers Dozen. And then it'll be exciting to introduce our featured interview today, which was recorded in the here and now versus from the archives. And that's Kim Collins of Guardian Brewing Company. So, Scott, why don't you start us off with some updates? Generally, we like to hear what are the updates that the brewers, our member breweries, should be aware of?
I think the big updates are we just had the passing and signature of a federal piece of legislation, which is the Payroll Protection Flexibility Act. Not to bog down in the details, which could get real boring real fast, but this federal help and support and forgivable loans have been modified to make it work better for businesses, and it will be helpful to some of our brewery members. We also had the governor announce that the state would be going into the next phase in the reopening plan, which allows breweries to open, restaurants, bars, brewery tasting rooms to open all across the state, whereas previously we had been open in the two regions that include the northern part of the Lower Peninsula and the UP. So that's great news for breweries and for enthusiasts and the public in general, I would say. And that goes into effect Monday, the 8th of June, 2020.
Yeah, which as you're listening to this will be yesterday or further away than that, depending on when you listen.
Yeah, right.
So it's underway. That is very exciting, and exciting probably in all of the ways, in that it's good to see progress and start getting towards heading towards that business, and then it's also probably terrifying. So understandably stressful for everybody figuring out how to navigate.
Yeah, to be sure, there are going to be some challenges and the stress of reopening. When you think about reopening from a consumer perspective, it might seem like everybody's eager and it's easy, but there are lots of new protocols that need to be put in place. I think there's the stress of limited capacity, and I've had some people with very small, narrow tasting rooms go, I don't even know how we can do that at all. And then places with more established or more restaurant, they've had challenges where they've been closed saying, I don't even know what food items are available, or I have to figure out what food items are available because the whole supply chain has been disrupted. Food suppliers quit providing for all those restaurants, and those who supply them quit supplying, and it doesn't just turn back on because it's able to. There's actually a process, and it's affecting availability of food items. It's affecting prices of food items. I know I've had discussions with some folks that say, hey, I'm known for this food item, and it's really going to be more expensive now, or I'm going to have to change the quality, and I don't know, that's a real balance or a trade-off. So just thinking about the re-engaging supply in many cases is a challenge, let alone can I get the labor to show up that I need to open, and then all the unknowns. How is it going to go when I have these new plans and protocols in place and folks come into my tasting room or restaurant and they know each other. They're going to be happy to see each other, and they're going to want to pull the chair closer to the neighboring party, and I'm supposed to keep them 6 feet apart. There's certainly going to be challenges, and I think the call goes out to all the consumers, most of whom I will intuitively get this, but we're going to need to be patient and thoughtful and considerate as we re-engage with the places we like to go.
No question. No question. So good luck to all of our member breweries, and goodwill towards all the consumers. We'll be seeing each other soon at a brewery somewhere. Enthusiast member update. We got anything new going on for them, or is it a little bit of another update towards this Great Beer State program? Is there anything else besides that going on?
I guess I would like to highlight that that we are still working on the technical aspects of what we hope will be a fun enthusiast member benefit, which will be an inside look at us recording this kind of introduction to each podcast episode, including some time for question and answer. Hopefully that'll be fun and engaging. It's kind of timely. I'll note that I've just been working on an ad for the UP Fall Beer Festival, and there have been questions about with the summer festival being canceled, what are plans or any announcements for the two fall festivals, the one in Marquette and the one in Detroit, and we haven't made any announcements about canceling those. Sometimes it's hard to be optimistic about thinking that we can have them, and we may be able to have that opportunity, but if we have to have dramatically reduced capacity and social distancing, there are going to be logistics that may not make it feasible. So anyway, it was interesting. I was working on an ad for the UP Festival today that we're going to go ahead and place, and I, rather than not advertise, not knowing what's going to happen, the ad kind of says, hey, we don't know. This is when it's scheduled to happen, but we really don't know the status. Kind of a weird process to go through.
Yeah, uncharted territory, for sure. So in regards to Great Beer State podcast, stay tuned for that. We will be sharing information, an email, on here, on social media, and we'll let you know how to access it and what it's all about. And you'll basically be able to view this introduction prior to that episode coming out. So it can be a little bit of a preview for the next week's episode. And then, as Scott said, we'll stay on for a little bit longer and field any questions there might be. So nice opportunity for conversation. So the last update is for the public. So you covered a little ground there in terms of stay tuned on fall beer festivals. And we covered a little ground on be patient, be kind, and be supportive as you would, of course, naturally, but it's a good reminder that things may be challenging. And so what else we've got what do we have for the beer consuming, Michigan supporting public out there?
I really think the re-engagement and reopening that's just dominating my thoughts about what I'll be doing and what other folks will be doing, and what our brewery members are really they're working hard on it. They're pretty focused on that.
Yeah. I feel like that was coming up for me earlier in the earlier part of the conversation too, is you think about any opening, whether it's the first time ever and it's something they've been working on for years in their head, or whether it's a second location, which is still likely years in planning, and then that ramp up to the opening has a little different feel to it. But people have all this enthusiasm and energy and camaraderie and excitement towards opening that helps fuel the whole thing, and they have months and months to get it right. And here they're reopening under duress with funding and staff challenges, supply chain challenges, and a couple of weeks. So it is a quick fire challenge. And I think I just share that because it comes up for me having some behind the scenes knowledge of like, this has got all the anticipation and very little of the opportunity for preparation, and then everybody's coming in a little frayed on top of it emotionally, and um, so that's just something to keep in mind and be as supportive as possible.
Yeah, that emotional aspect really makes me think. Um, it's been an emotional time for everybody, and I think of the people that I'm close to and myself, and how you may not think about it, and then it bubbles forth from others or yourself in weird ways. I imagine we've all seen different little outpourings of emotion that were unexpected, and I know a lot of our brewery businesses in their tasting rooms, some never closed down completely, but for those who did, they probably have never ever been closed this long. It it it's a whole different emotional ride. Most of them close, even if they close 2 days a week. Some only close on Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving or something, and they just have never been closed like this.
Yep. Yep. It's the great unknown. And, it just, not to run too deep with it before we get to Brewer's Dozen, but it also reminds me of some stuff I work on with the horses, which is, saying you want to be patient and kind with those providing service to us and bringing us beer and food. It doesn't mean that you can't get frustrated or that it won't be frustrating. I think what I'm encouraging is that if you feel frustrated, just take a moment and try not to deliver it back. We're gonna run into frustrations. Food's gonna take too long. They're gonna be out of something. We're not gonna be able to get in when we wanted to get in. Those things are gonna happen, and you're gonna feel frustrated. That's okay. That's sort of my
Absolutely.
encouraging
That's
words.
probably
Is
good advice for life in general.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna happen, and if we can just feel that and say, "Oh, there it is," and let it pass, and not take it out on a server or somebody else or the business owner or anybody or the next guest behind us. And if we can just say, I can withstand a little delay and a little discomfort on this path forward, I think that'd be great for everybody, including yourself. So those are our words of patience
Agreed.
today. And you'll find a cold beer in your future either way. All right, so this brings us to the Brewer's Dozen. This is our tradition of working through the member roles of member breweries for the Michigan Brewers Guild, 13 at a time, with some shout outs here on the Great Beer State podcast. Scott, you want to start it off?
Yeah, I'd like to mention Albion Malleable Brewing Company
All right.
in Albion.
And I've got Atwater Brewery, which has 3 locations, Detroit, Atwater Grand Rapids, and Atwater in the Park in Grosse Pointe Park.
Barrel and Beam in Marquette, the unique focus on sour and beers in that vein.
That's awesome. I can remember when that seemed like speaking Greek to the beer drinking public, let alone focusing a brewery on it. We've got Beer to Mac Brew Works in Mackinac City.
And I'm thinking of Brewery 424 in Holland.
Right on. Bustling Holland with several breweries now. We've got Conflux City Brewing Company in Portland, Michigan.
Yep, nice little neighborhood family-run place, and
Portland's just
an old favorite of many.
yeah,
Go
and they're
ahead,
like
Bill.
maybe 20 minutes out of Grand Rapids. Is that about right?
Yeah, kind of between Grand Rapids and Lansing.
Mm-hmm.
Dragonmead Microbrewery, one that has been a great brewery for many years in Michigan and Warren.
Right on. Kalamazoo Valley Community College Brewery in Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's another shift in perspective in a way, in that they've been around a few years now, but I think in the Wayback Machine, imagining community colleges having brewery licenses would have seemed pretty surreal. And here we are.
Yep, but that's one of our brewing programs in the state and the brewery that they have. So it's small and designed to be educational, but they do offer opportunities for people to come in and have a beer. It's limited.
Outstanding.
Fillmore 13 Brewery in Pontiac. There for a while there was no brewery in Pontiac, so it's nice to see Fillmore 13. They've been there for quite a few years. Cool old building that they're in.
Nice. We've got Grand Rapids Brewing Company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's another old timer, not necessarily in its current location or current ownership, but the original was around a long time.
Well, yeah, there was a historical Grand Rapids Brewing Company that was prominent, but we've seen a couple iterations, and one of the very first pubs was named Grand Rapids Brewing Company. So fun one to think about. And Holmes Brewery in Ann Arbor is a really nice location. They're doing some interesting things, quite popular, and they focus on some unusual and kind of I don't know if hard to get is the right word, but they do some sour beers and some bottle specialties and different things that are um, pretty pretty sought after, I'd say.
Nice. Next up, we got Oracle Brewing Company in Saginaw.
Yeah, it's in the downtown area. I visited there and had a nice experience. And Three Blondes Brewing in South Haven is really a beautiful place, nice restaurant, um, summer beach town to be sure.
Yeah. So that's the Brewer's Dozen. And then I guess we got a bonus too, because we're introducing talk I had with Kim Collins of Guardian Brewing in Saugatuck. So another southwestern Michigan, not quite on the lake, but the town is on the lake. So lakeshore spot. And, Kim's story is pretty interesting. She just began brewing professionally in 2012. And 5-6 years later, she and her partner Kate are brewery owners and moving right along. So it was pretty interesting to just talk to her and get her perspective as both a young brewer, a female brewer, and not only those things as an individual, but as a young brewery. I think it's just a different experience, and great to hear a fresh perspective.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the interview with Kim and learned a lot. I'm getting to know her. She's on the Brewers Guild Board of Directors as one of our newer members, so I'm enjoying getting to know her a little bit. I thought in listening to her talk about her path, it really made me think of back to some of my own days and her talking about how she felt inspired to continue with brewing and kind of pulled in by it. I certainly had a number of those experiences myself developing my career and was kind of identifying with that part of the conversation.
Yeah, me too. It sent me there, and I could not help but have this sort of old timer response of comparing the time frames. I think partly because of the number of breweries and just the way things have changed over the last couple of decades that, I felt like, the theme was fast forward in a lot of ways. Where like I was there for a while and then I moved on, and in the 90s, that would have been 3 years, 5 years. And
Yeah.
she was describing 5 months and 6 months. And it's just impressive in a way. So it's certainly not a question on my part, other than that when I compared it to my own experience of even advising people on how do I get in the beer business. So I want to start my own brewery. Where do I start? How do I do this? It's like I could never say, well, you should do it within 6 years. It's amazing path. And surely there's a lot of other interesting stuff just besides the time frame, but I thought that was compelling, at least for comparison to my perspective.
Yeah, and the brewery and the space at Guardian Brewing Company is one thing that's unique is it has this old theater, the Red Barn Theater, which is a kind of a dusty old building. At least it was when I was in it. But I think they're breathing life into what had been an old farm that had been used as a theater, and her thoughts about community and what it means to their brewery and how thoughtful and the time they spent in finding that as a location, and looking for a community and a place for a business was just really a great story and fun to listen to.
Yeah, and it was a classic building, and as sort of a member of this community nearby, I had that added perspective of that was a building that needed some love and could have been knocked down and forgotten about in some development plans, and to have somebody come in and appreciate the space for what it was and want it to be a community center with sort of a new life, I think was embraced. And I was glad to see it for one. So it was interesting to get a little bit more of that story, um, especially with them coming from out of town and finding it, and then setting roots here. I think it was fun to hear talk about how to go through that and consider your impact on the local scene and how to become part of it versus sell to it.
Yeah, fun place to have a beer. I
Yeah,
really enjoy going there.
and they've kept going. Sounds like relatively strongly throughout this whole pandemic. So they've been working the to-go food and beer um, uh, well, and they've stayed busy and active, which is good to see. So, and then I guess lastly, you mentioned already, but I love seeing the balance of the board continue to evolve, and maybe you can share a little bit about that. I think, um, having a young brewery make it onto the board so soon into their own arc of creating the brewery, and um, maybe you can just talk about the evolution of the board and how those opportunities come and go, and what it's like having Kim as a board member, and just any thoughts on that whole thing. I think it's an interesting point to note, and love to hear what you think about how her voice impacts the board.
Sure, the Michigan Brewers Guild, of course, is the day-to-day operations are run by quote unquote staff, which is led by me, the executive director, and then we have Shannon O'Brien, who is our events manager, and she deals with a lot of member functions. And Sherry Kepsel is actually our membership manager, and she's also an accountant and does all of our bookkeeping and accounting, which is a really important function. So with a small team, um, we all are very hands-on with the day-to-day affairs, and the board of directors' job is to have the overarching view and vision and give the organization its direction. And it's a 7-member board. They're elected from our membership, and they serve 2-year terms. It's quite common for somebody to serve more than one term, and the incumbents often get elected, I think, because they get some experience and they're kind of well known, or at least a known entity. And I feel like our membership has generally been really supportive of what we're doing, based on their voting and re-electing members who run. But they don't want to stay on the board forever, and it's actually a really healthy thing for the board members to turn over, and not be stagnant. And we certainly had good, more turnover than maybe in previous years in the last election, and Kim got elected as part of that. But I feel like our board is really quite representative of our membership. Most of our board members represent small breweries, if not very small. There is a mix. I guess the largest brewery represented would be New Holland. Isaac Hartman is our president, and he's been on the board for a while, new in the president role. But the other members, Kim's Brewery is quite small. It's a brew pub. We've got, you look at Beard's Brewery or Storm Cloud or Cedar Springs, or River Rouge is a very small kind of husband and wife operation with really limited employees. Probably not mentioning somebody, I wasn't really thinking about it, but the Chelsea Ale House Brewery is another pub. But most of our brewery members are quite small, not that many years in business, and I think that our board has a pretty good balance of folks who have been in business for a while, as well as some new ones. And we really, I think we really have the heart of our membership represented by the folks that are on the board, including Kim Collins at Guardian Brewing Company.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we can hand it off to the conversation. So we're excited to introduce Kim Collins, brewer, entrepreneur, Michigan Brewers Guild board member, Guardian Brewing Company in Saugatuck, Michigan. Here's Kim. Well, welcome to the Great Beer State podcast.
Yeah, super excited.
Yeah, me too. It's really fun to mix in some new interviews here alongside the ones we did for A Rising Tide. So you were our first interview of 2020 for Michigan's Great Beer State podcast.
Awesome.
So, I'd love to start. There's all sorts of stuff going on and lots of things to talk about, but I'd love to start kind of hearing more. If you could just sort of share your background, how you came into beer or brewing, and kind of sort of wander our way through conversation that'll lead us up to today. But how did all this get started for you?
For me, I feel like it started a really long time ago. So like a lot of people, I started homebrewing and just had fun with it, and did it with some friends. Actually, a friend of mine, I remember we made a 10-gallon dark beer and we had no idea what it was, so we just called it a porter, and it tasted good, so we just kept going. I used to be I don't know, people would say a professor, but I have a master's degree. So I used to help run outdoor adventures down in Bloomington, Indiana. So training outdoor leaders. And so we were making homebrew and going on expeditions and training outdoor leaders. And I was just kind of tired of being away from home a lot. And I just felt like I was missing a lot of the great things about our local community down there in Bloomington. And so Kate, my partner, said, if you weren't going to do this whole outdoor career thing, what would you do? And so I said I would do something with beer, food, or music. And so I don't think anybody really knows what it's like to be a professional brewer until you do it. And so I, having come from academia, took an MBAA course up in Madison. So I took the Brewing and Malting certificate course. I knew I wasn't going to go back to school like a lot of people are getting into brewing now. Like I had already done 2 degrees, so you can't send me back. I'm done. And but I knew that the schooling might be a nice kind of rounding to some actual practical experience. So did that MBAA course, was applying for jobs, and everyone's like, I can't hire you because you have no experience. And I was like, yeah, I know, like that's super obvious. Like, of course I don't. Like that's what you're for.
Yeah. Can you tell me about what year we're talking about here between the home brewing and then when you started to make this shift?
Yeah. So home brewing probably starting like 13, 15 years ago. And then took that MBA course in 2012.
Gotcha.
So took that course, like I said, just like applying for jobs and looking for anything. And my friend Eric Rohde, who used to brew for Tommyknocker, said, just come in and see me. Like, I don't necessarily have a position for you, but, maybe we can talk and figure something out. And so I asked if I could be his apprentice and said yes. And what that meant back then was working for free. And so I was going to Tommyknocker Brewing in Idaho Springs, Colorado. I lived in Golden, Colorado at the time. I'd moved out there in 2012, right before that MBAA course. Figured that was a great place to be at the time, like really booming for beer and lots of opportunities compared to Indiana. Just didn't hit its boom until a year or two later. So yeah, we're out there, and I was apprenticing for Tommyknocker. And once I started driving the forklift, they got a little worried and put me on part-time. And then from there, I knew I was hooked. Like, I just wanted to be a brewer. I liked the cleaning. I liked the brewing. I liked it all.
Nice. So to clarify for those listening, if I'm tracking right, they weren't worried about your forklift driving. They were saying,
No, they were worried about, like,
if you're on a forklift, you
liability.
should be an employee.
Right. They were
It
like,
sounded
wow,
like it
they
could go
can
the other
drive.
way. Like, holy cow, we got to get her brewing. Have you seen her on a forklift?
No, that woman could totally handle a forklift, but if she puts it through the wall or something happens, they were worried about the liability. Which,
yeah, so there's that point where, and I remember joking, well, throughout my career, there's been moments where you hang around long enough, you're going to turn into an employee. Like, there's that moment where, okay, wait a second, the help out, the drop by was cool for a while, but we are a company at this point. We ought to cross that threshold, and you're an employee now.
Yeah, I love that crew that I started with at Tommyknocker. They're very, very important to me, and they let my career happen.
Yeah,
they kind of let me start. So I'm super appreciative to them, and yeah, I always hold a soft spot for them.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that part of the brewing industry, which is like so many other kind of historic trades, and that I think, it's interesting because that word internship has a lot of different connotations, but I think the other word is apprenticeship, that there's a long history of apprenticeship where, well, there's experts or mentors that take people under their wing and teach them a trade, which feels a little different than that other alignment. And that seems like what happened there is you went from, kind of hobbyist to, okay, we're going to open the door.
Yeah. And it opened wide. It was great.
Yeah, that's great. So that seems like a big shift too, to go from, I like homebrewing, I'm not sure I want to do this other career, to we're moving to Colorado.
Yeah, so Kate had lived out there before, and we decided that we were moving because it just felt right for both of us at that time. And then as soon as we said we were moving, she got a job with Metropolitan State University of Denver. So she was an assistant professor out there. And I mean, that's what we were hoping all along. So it worked out well.
That's great. So tell me about life after that first opportunity. How long were you there, and how did your perspective change? Because, you mentioned people don't know the life of a brewer, and I would say that went for you at some point, and then now you're in the mix with that door open wide. Say, I don't know, in your first year or so, how did you feel your view and your perspective change about what it meant to be brewing, and what did you start to look forward to after that?
I would say it was like my first couple jobs. So that first job, I was really doing a lot of brewing shadowing and a lot of like prep work for them. And they had a full-time position open. And I was, because I didn't live in town, and our towns, like there was like a hill between the two. And anytime it would snow, there was a good shot that they would close the highway. So they needed somebody that could absolutely be there pretty much on snowmobile, no matter what happened. And so I got passed over for that job, but that team was really important. So I felt very respected, which wasn't always the case in all of my positions, but like those guys were really open. They were sharing, like I'm still in touch with them. They are running breweries all over the country now. My next job was with Boulder Beer, which like, so sorry to see them close their doors.
Yeah.
Right prior to the pandemic, but that was more of a job where, so I was at Tommyknocker for about, I'd say 3 or 4 months. And then I really knew that I wanted to do this full time, and they just didn't have a position for me. They're a shockingly small brewery for the amount of beer that they put out. And so I knew that I wanted to do this full time and really dig in and know more. And so I went to work for Boulder Beer as a full-time brewer. And I learned so much about brewing and about cellaring and filtering. Turns out I was really good at filtering and cellaring, so that was where I hung out. I called it the steel forest. It's like big 200 barrel tanks,
Yeah.
and I would spend like 12 hours standing in a 10 by 10 area there learning how to make everything right. And so
that seems like another pretty big opportunity for the amount of experience that you had. How did those conversations go? And that seems like that just must have been like fate for that position to open up and then for you to get it.
Fred, they're all fated. Like, I didn't even know how to use a tri-clamp. So the clamp that we used to clamp all the pieces together in a brewery. Like,
yeah.
I remember my boss, Steve, being very frustrated, but so patient, like super patient. Like, this is how you use a clamp. And he's like, follow me around. Let's do it. And like, I paid my dues. I think I spent 2 weeks on the bottling line and I didn't complain. And I did my work. I put my head down and made sure I did a good job. Finished my day, met some people, and they were like, all right, get her off the bottling line. Like, I passed. It was like I passed a test, right? So low hurdle jumped. If you can handle the bottling line, you can go up to cellaring. And so from there, like, Steve just taught me everything. He's an engineer, so I didn't always know what he was talking about. And I'm surprised at how little I knew about professional brewing when I was being taught to do things. But through my outdoor career and like being kind of in experiential education, anything that's hands-on, I can learn, whether it's brewing or plumbing or maybe even someday electrical work. Not super interested, but you never know. So yeah, Steve just taught me everything I need to know. So it was like, in the moment, need to know basis. This is how you do this. So go do that. And then once I had, a new thing to learn, it'd be like, this is how you do that. And so I spent 5 months with them, very little time on the brew house, but lots of time everywhere else. Anything from canning line when they brought it in to everything related to, like, soon as the hot work was passed and getting cooled, I was pitching yeast. I was, bringing the brinks up. It was a 3-level brewery. It was got to be really creative about ergonomic lifting of things. And, there were catwalks and forklifts and dry hopping. Oh, yeah, that's nice. I have a timer on my light in my office. Hang on one sec.
Yeah.
But
it's like, I can't wave for you over
I
here.
know. And I can't actually wave. So we'll just go with beautiful natural sunlight.
There you go. That works.
Does that still work?
Yeah, that's
like
good.
Like a crazy spotlight.
It's a warm ambiance now.
There we go.
Moved into natural lighting.
Yeah, I'm like, this is what we get for caring about the environment. It turns off like every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of faith in the tasks that they gave me, but I just kept doing what they asked me to do, how they asked me to do it, and just kind of picking up skills as it went. Like, I'm not sure why they chose me versus someone who had any experience at all, because I didn't.
Right. But, that's the way it goes sometimes. If you're there when the opportunity opens up and you answer the call and you're part of the team, the team moves forward and carries on. I think I love that about lots of different things in my experiences throughout the career, but also that's part of the brewing industry, that if, there's a certain sense that if you're in and you're part of this crew, then we're going to go get the job done with who we have. And we'll add crew members as we need to, but it's sort of pulled from, I don't know, there's just a sense of family there that I think is what makes this combination. By combination, I mean there's people that are coming at their opportunities from an education first point of view, and then there's people that are coming at it from work their way up and then get the education, or there's all sorts of different combinations. But
Absolutely.
The consistency seems that, successful crews move forward when they're collaborating and educating one another.
Yeah.
Whichever way you got to the team, both happen. And
it was a pretty big team. I'd say there were like, 8 of us on the brew team, maybe 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, now that I look back, it was really fun to see everybody kind of spin off and start their own projects and start their own breweries. And now that, all this time has passed, because that's like early 2013, I can really see the benefit of being trained by so many people doing so many different things. It really helped me decide how Guardian was going to be run. Like
Yeah.
there's still little details that I'm sure if they were to visit, they'd like, oh yeah, like that's how we used to do it when we were Boulder. Or that's how we used to do it when we
Oh
were
yeah. Well, and it's funny to hear you say as much time has passed, because when I think about some of the other eras, I'm like, that seems like the most compressed, fast timeline I've ever heard
Oh
of.
yeah, I know. But I still
When
felt
you're
like if
doing
I
it, and
didn't
it's
get in,
also how things changed. As the brewing industry changed, things got faster. That the progress and the demand for talent changed as breweries opened left and right. You're talking about years that were very prolific in terms of brewery openings. So it makes sense that was a lot faster.
yeah, but now is
But as
even
an old guy, I
faster.
was like, wow, that doesn't seem like a lot of time.
Right.
Um, but it's reflective of kind of where, especially in Colorado, um,
Yeah.
very vibrant scene. And like you said, everybody spun off and went on to other jobs. So every
Yep.
time somebody gets an opportunity and moves on to another job, there's a hole that needs to be filled for a busy brewery with a lot of demand.
Yes.
So that's an interesting influence on that apprenticeship attitude of like, especially when you're busy.
Absolutely. They definitely kept me busy. After that, so I only lasted about 5 months there. Like
Uh-huh.
I think sometimes we're a part of teams that make sense, and we know sometimes that we can be a part of a team that where we can do better work. And
Mm-hmm.
so driving up to Boulder every day, and the team that was there, I just thought that I had gleaned what I needed to glean from that experience. Remember, I'm not normal. Like I'm an educator, so I pick up stuff pretty fast.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I was kind of building a reputation of being a person who jumped around to lots of different breweries. So I was trying to be careful of that. But I went and brewed full time for Epic Brewing in Denver after that. And that's where everything came together. Like the cellaring came together, but then I was like, they trained me to be on the brew house, up to 3 brews a day. So I'd get that 4th beer started, somewhere in the afternoon and kick it off to the person that was coming. But doing batch after batch after batch is really different than anything else I had done. And it's super different than what I'd done here. But my long days here, I feel like we're in prep because of all the time and the efficiency that I learned at Epic.
Yeah. Yeah. That production sensibility. And were you guys a 24-hour brew at that point? Was the plant running 24 hours?
We were five or 6 days a week, 4 brews a day. So at most, the brew day would be 12 to 14 hours if you were to hang around for, well, no, maybe 16 hours if you were to hang around for the whole thing, but they kind of split us somewhere in there.
So 2 shifts, but you were keeping that. It wasn't, you're going to finish your brews. And what made me think it might be 24 hours is that handoff of, okay, this process is going to keep rolling. The fluid is moving through the equipment for both of these shifts versus shift 1 makes beer, shift 2 makes the other beer. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So sometimes we were making 1 batch of 1 beer, or 2 of 2 beers and 2 of a different beer. It was really interesting. But so it was 2 shifts. The first shift, if we were doing a 4 brew day, would start at 4 a.m. and the last shift would end when it was done. Sometimes you got done at midnight. Sometimes it was 10 to. It depends how efficient everyone was able to be.
So can you tell me at what point you started to imagine having your own brewery, building your own brewery? Had that started yet? When did that seed first germinate, so to speak?
2011.
Wow. So before all this,
I entered the industry knowing that we were going to open a brewery. I just really didn't know what that meant. And I wouldn't even say I really knew what that meant until we opened Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Like opening your own brewery is completely unlike anything else that you could do. It's probably like opening your own restaurant, but it's not like working for anybody else. You are now in charge of yourself, your crew, your building, your property, you're a part of the town. There's just so many little pieces to it, but it was always what I wanted to do. So like, I remember not finding jobs in 2011 before that MBAA course and being like, fine, I'm just going to go trademark the name Guardian. So here I go. So we have held the trademark since 2012.
Wow. That's great. And, and that's forward thinking vision to be, so you had, I guess I want to qualify or not qualify. I want to talk about that a little bit more. Did you have any sense of the where or the what, like pub, production, Colorado, Michigan, doesn't matter? Like what sort of detail did that vision have? Was there anything more besides I'm going to open something and it's going to be called Guardian?
No, it had a lot of vision, because Kate and I had spent so many years like working with our students and helping them prepare their own visions and mission plans for their future, that we knew it was going to be a pub. So we came into the food piece pretty quickly, because as wonderful it is to go get a beer, people really want to hang around if it's like a whole experience. And so I think that that's where, once we, get a little bit more financially stable, people will be able to see this in Michigan. So we will have yurts so that you can stay overnight. That was really important. We thought we'd also have like campground spots for tents, but you can't do that in Lake Township here. So that's out, but that's okay, because we can still do the yurt thing. So we wanted people to stay overnight. Just think of like our camping backgrounds. We want live music, we want festivals, we want it all in one big space. And so we were always looking for property that, would have good drive-by for everyday customers, wasn't too far out for anybody to find, and people would want to stay. So whether it's like on a patio and then stay overnight. So at one point in time, we were under contract in this beautiful 40-acre horse property in Conifer, Colorado, that butted up to the Flying JJ Ranch. So like with an easement from our neighbor, you'd be able to hike like 10 miles of trails right from our property.
Wow.
And we really thought that was it. Like, I felt it. I was like, this is it. This is where we're going to be. Like, we were going to go open in Colorado. Like, it made sense at the time. But it turned out that we could never get the water or the septic or the sewer or any of that worked out on the properties that we were looking at. So after you run into enough roadblocks and you can't seem to find a property that's on like public water and sewage, but that people would still want to camp in, leave it to Kate to be like, well, what if we didn't open in Colorado? Because my brain wasn't thinking that. I was like, let's just keep looking. And we had already been looking for a year and a half. Like, there's only so long you can, quit your full-time brewing job and just be like running around looking at properties. Like, that's not financially feasible. And so other states that we thought about were Oregon, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Massachusetts. And
now, is this happening while you're still brewing?
Yeah, it's happening after I quit full-time brewing for Barrels and Bottles.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify, just because I heard you say you quit your full-time job to look. So There was a point. Maybe let's come back to this point we're leaving right now, and let's just back up to a minute. What prompted that seam to say, I'm going to quit my full-time gig and really start the full-blown search? How is that decision made, maybe compared to we'll keep looking while I'm brewing and having that run parallel?
That was the original plan. Like, let's keep looking while I'm brewing. So I was a head brewer. And so I mean, being a head brewer is everything that you need to know about brewing, minus the ownership piece. And so that's the only piece that you really get to know on the job. So I figured I had kind of hit that point where I had learned enough. And we were not a strong team, the two owners and I. It just wasn't the right time for us, and I wasn't the right person to be their brewer. So I was with them for about a year and a half, and it was time for me to go.
Okay.
So it happened way faster than I thought it was going to. It happened faster than they thought it was going to. And, when tempers run high, things end quick. I'll just admit that. So didn't
that makes
end
sense.
well. Wasn't a good team.
And it wasn't related to your search. It was related to your fit there. And happening while you're pursuing this search. So if I'm paraphrasing correctly, it was almost like a pivot to like, well, I'm already trying to do this thing. Let's get after it.
It was a perfect pivot. I had gone to a family reunion over the weekend, and while I was gone, they asked me to go on a soul search. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting wording. I was like, okay, I'll think about this. And so my family is involved in Guardian, and whether it's just by opinion or just because they're my family and we're all up in each other's business anyway. But they're just like, aren't you ready to start your own brewery? Like, aren't you, like, you should just do it. Like, what are you waiting for? And I'm like, you're right. I should just do it. So that familial nudge happened, and off we went.
Great. So back to the search, and I guess, we can cut to the chase and say, how did Michigan get included in the list? And then how did you end up coming here?
So Kate and I are very close with our families. So we decided that two coasts need to go. So Massachusetts out, Oregon out. We were looking at Madison. We were looking at the west coast of Michigan, because as far as the Midwest goes at that time, so this would be like 2015, Madison was really booming as a place, the capital within the state. And then Michigan, oh my gosh, the craft beer industry in Michigan, it was fun to see that just like blowing out all over the place. It's great. So many breweries, so many places without breweries, which I thought was great. So we couldn't find anything that we really liked around Madison. And we looked at 100 properties from New Buffalo to Muskegon. And we just kept settling around Fenville, Saugatuck, Douglas. Like, just love the area, love the people, love the downtown, like love that like local, like support everybody, make it all here vibe. And that's other places too, but the openness of it, the rainbow flags didn't hurt. I'm like an artist community, like all those things tick the boxes for this is where we want to spend the rest of our lives, which is crazy to me as a person who used to lead expeditions. I have never looked for a place to live for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that shift in the same region.
Yeah, so we love it here. It's amazing. It was just obvious.
And so was that region magnet? It sounds like it was before finding the property that you had eventually started the business at, and I guess tell me a little bit about that. Segue or compress as much as you'd like, but tell me about finding the property and getting Guardian open.
So trying to find a property from 1,500 miles away is pretty funny on its own. So I remember we flew in to visit our family over Christmas, maybe like 2015, 16, somewhere in there, like January 16. And we drove to all the different towns up and down the coast and to all these different properties that were for sale. And we would turn off the car and we would sit and see who's going to drive by in the dead of winter. And like, no one's driving by. You don't hear anything, probably not hitting the mark that we were looking for as far as being able to be open year round. And so, like I said, Saugatuck, Douglas, Fenville, that area, we loved it, but we could not find a property here for a long time, probably about 6 months. We kept, like, our broker, Diane, is amazing. She was knocking on people's doors and asking if they wanted to sell their farm, like stuff that wasn't even for sale. Like, do you want to just sell your barn and the yard and you keep the house, or you sell the house? Or, she was trying to help us any way possible. She's like, I want you in my town. And we're just like, we love this town. She's in Douglas. So we looked at a lot of places that didn't fit the bill here, and then just serendipitous, just like everything else that's happened in my career, the Red Barn goes up for sale. And Kate and Diane found it at the same time. And I remember like standing on a rock in our backyard in Golden, because we're on like the first foothill outside of Denver. And so the cell reception is horrible. So I'm like, on the rock, like leaning 5 degrees this way. And I was like, you found a barn? I'm like, we found a barn. I'm like, we found one too. And I flew in early April of 17. And we were under contract that next week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I just loved it. I stood on that stage. It was just like chills. I just knew this was the place.
Wow. Good for you. So that's amazing. And it's a small team effort between yourself, Kate and Diane, and whoever else is involved in the family nudging you forward. That decision and that commitment all of a sudden, I imagine begins a chain reaction of, okay, now what? And also like, now who? So can you tell me a little bit about assembling your team and I guess just what the steps towards getting open then look like?
Yep. So my dad's part in our team was, so he's been in commercial real estate for like almost, I don't know, almost 40 years at this point in time. And so we had him as a consultant, and he was like, you need, this kind of person, you need a civil engineer, and so we kind of ticked this list. Because remember, I studied recreation. Like, I can build good staff teams and like bring community together, but like hiring lawyers is not my forte. I don't even know what kind to do. So we had him kind of guiding the basis of that. And then Kate and I love to do ridiculous amounts of research to make sure that we find exactly what we're looking for. And we had gone to a bunch of websites looking for an architect in the area. And so we chose Ed Zweigeisen from Gen 1. And he has been involved in a lot of projects in the area, but the one that we went to go see was Triple Root. So we went to Triple Root Brewing. We checked out the inside. We're like, this place is awesome. Like, all this old barnwood, and they have like the story behind it, and just like very warm vibes, and it was great. So we knew that we wanted to use Ed. Ed was connected with CL Construction, and we became really close with the Lamar brothers from there, and they gave us all the connections from there. And so we went more traditional building. I didn't try to like, put the studs in the wall myself. Like, I had other stuff to do. So I'm so grateful that we had an architect who understood what we wanted and made the drawings even way better, like things that we didn't even think about. And then a construction crew that took care of everything. So, and that would talk to us, both Ed's team and the brothers. We always felt respected. So, for example, we had a guy come sell us some epoxy. And he looks right at Ed and says, what kind of epoxy would you like for your floor? And Ed goes, I don't know. I'm not the brewer. She's the brewer. And the guy turns like bright red. And we didn't run into that many people that worked with our team that did that. So that was pretty cool. It was almost like they were being vetted before they showed up on property. Like, these guys are really invested in this project. Like, I was working on property while they were building property, because they're, it's a property from 1912. Like, it needs a lot of love.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were really fortunate. Our team was wide, very deep.
That's great. And it's great to hear that you felt supported and respected through the process. Cause I think, that's one of the questions that could easily come up here. I don't always love it, because it's sort of like, I look at you as a business owner and a brewer, not saying a woman brewer or female brewer, although it's also relevant that there has historically been different paths, depending on, where you're coming from. And that's just one of the challenges our industry and every other industry has faced. So I guess that's a good opportunity to both be glad that you had a path that felt supported, and also ask, is there anything you'd share with other women wanting to pursue either a career or wanting to pursue opening their own place, lessons that you learned through this process, or encouraging words?
Yeah, I would say, so both of my parents are business owners. So I kind of come in looking at both of them together and separately. Like, just, we grew up always being told that we could do it, whatever it was, like we could do it. So we were able to go and do and be whatever we wanted to be. And I know that that's not told to many people, but like, women who want to open their own businesses, or people feeling anxious about it, doesn't matter who you are, or worried about how it's going to be, like how you'll be received in your community or whatever, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We all know it. So we'll just say that anybody feeling apprehensive about that process, starting a new career, starting a business, if you want it, go do it, and don't let anybody tell you no, and don't let anyone stand in your way. That doesn't mean that we need to be aggressive or forceful. It just means that you need almost to be a little like headstrong and stubborn about it. Just be like, I am doing this. So for example, we had called around to some of the properties that we were looking at before we got here. And I heard, you will never open a brewery on septic. And I was like, oh yeah, watch me. And we did. We're operating on septic. It's legal. It smells good. Like we're not having the problems that people really warned me about. They said, don't do it. But there's a lot of little hurdles in the way that will pop up minus just trying to open your own business or start a new career.
Yeah.
I'd say my advice is if you want it, go get it, and don't let anyone stand in your way. Have them help you. Don't have them hold you back.
You know, what came up for me while you were sharing that is the thought that, having insecurities about your ability to do something, or insecurities about whatever risk you just put forward and whatever your worries are, that's universal. Doesn't matter about any of this other stuff, gender, color, anything. And yet whether they get support and confirmation from the community around you does change, unfortunately, based on who you are. That some people are more encouraged, some people are more discouraged. Yes. And so but the insecurity is in an odd way comforting to know that, everybody has them. So now somebody who's not typically accepted in a certain industry or community might have to stand stronger to say, I feel nervous about this. They're telling me to be more nervous about it. I need to move through it and say, no, I can push through. So I think, I don't know. It's a weird thing that came up for me in accepting the fact that, you're going to feel insecure at some point. It's a decision about what you do about it that's going to determine whether you open or not.
And for us, we didn't have a place to live when we moved here. So we actually lived in a friend's house, a friend that I helped open his brewery. It's a beautiful, another spin-off cycle of things. So we didn't have an address here for a long time. And so we used my dad's address in Chicago, and that really fired up the neighbors because they thought that someone from Chicago was coming in and going to bulldoze their Red Barn Theater. And I understand.
Oh, yeah.
I understand that local fear now that we've been here for about 3 years. There are beautiful things that are here. We love the people who own houses here. We need their support as far as being open year round. But we also really like how things are. And we don't want them to change a whole bunch. So now that we've been around longer, and we actually took time to have a meeting with the neighbors before we ever closed on the property, just so they could kind of air anxieties or questions about what a brewery is. And I think that they came in thinking it was going to be pretty debaucherous and left. I saw the the chest decompressed a little bit, and it left with hugs and handshakes versus frustration and anxiety on the way in. So
that's great.
It's on them too. It's happening to everyone that's around the businesses that are opening too. That's why these communities are so beautiful and strong here, because we're willing to connect. But you got to get through that anxiety to do so. Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about what kind of pre-COVID, what Guardian became. Talk about, moving forward to Guardian existing and making beers and being part of the community. Can you just kind of share how you would describe your brewery to people, and what what you want them to think about when they hear about Guardian? And then we'll talk about present day, all the craziness that's gone on in the last couple of months.
Yeah, we were really on a roll before this happened. I felt like we were really becoming ourselves. So for us, we have a pretty tight mug club group. And so we've grown that this year from 50 people the first year to 100 this year. So kind of opening the door a little bit wider to becoming beer family with Guardian. That's what we call the people who are around all the time, or beer family. Like, you're not just our customers anymore. You're in our lives. You're a part of this. So Mug Club's really big. We see a lot of those customers and friends often, which is fun. Some of them are out of state, so we'll just see them for like chunks at a time, and they, enjoy their membership when they visit. Beer School is a huge piece of Guardian that I had no idea it was going to be as big and as important as it is. So it is a monthly, or sometimes twice a month in the summer, set of classes, anything from off flavors to beer styles to history. All of them include history, style, and tasting. Sometimes it's food pairing. Sometimes we were going to start doing a series this summer related to how to homebrew. So in case people wanted to know that, it seems like the push more here is like, why don't we train to be great beer drinkers and knowledgeable about the history of beer and the styles, and then talk about where Guardian just spins right off of those styles and we're not trying to make crazy beer, but I love to work with all the flavors. So we have Mug Club, we have Beer School, and I love making things traditional as well. So we talk about that in Beer School. And then we have like trivia on Thursday nights has been huge. We do our own trivia, and we have our own silly trophy with a golden unicorn on top of I think it's like a vase or a candle pedestal. I glued them together and painted it gold. It's gorgeous. So you get, all the glory of holding that in your picture for the week. And then every Saturday night we do live music. So I'm really getting to blend that music piece, the beer piece, and then food. So my friend Dan Noonan is our chef, and he's incredible. He gets he lives what we ask for better than we do. So in a way, we ask for really quality vegan and vegetarian dishes, because I'm tired of watching vegans and vegetarians go to breweries and get a side dish of slaw, and then you really can't eat the slaw because it's got mayonnaise in it, and all that sort of stuff. So like, whether you are vegan, vegetarian, or a meat eater, you are covered at Guardian, and you can go back and forth and try things, and way more things than normal are vegan here, and you wouldn't miss it. So Dan is sourcing, so say like really high quality greens from Mud Lake Farms, local meat when we can, and cheeses. Like we worked with Evergreen Lane. I'm like, whenever we can, we do. And I hope to be able to do a lot more of that once the products are more available as all this weirdness changes. So hopefully more local products will be more readily available, because we want to support our community that way. We get squash and fruit from Hunsberger Orchards in Fenville. I'm like, I got plums, I got cherries. We did a pumpkin beer with them last year.
I can just about see them behind these hops, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So
they're right that way.
Nice. So yeah, they're good friends of ours, the whole family. I'm like, we love them.
Nice.
And we've been so fortunate to create those contacts. So Guardian is I always say it's about more than the beer. So we have really nice range of non-alcoholic options, and we have ciders and wines because we have a Class C, and we don't distribute. So you have to come here. So the point of Guardian, our tagline is quality, innovation, destination. That's why you come to Guardian.
Excellent. So speaking of community and being about more than the beer, I want to talk about the Michigan Brewers Guild and the Michigan beer community, whichever, rises in your mind. But can you tell me a little bit about becoming aware of the community and becoming aware of the guild? And then we'll kind of transition into your role in the guild currently. But what was your discovery of the Michigan brewing community like?
Well, because we were so tight with the guild in Colorado, I knew immediately that we wanted to be tight with the guild here. Like, I just know that it's a worthwhile experience, and it just enriches everything that you do. It's even more worthwhile as an owner brewer. So we knew we wanted to do that. And so before we opened, when Kate and I had all the time in the world, we would drive to as many breweries as we possibly could. And I think we got to like almost 90, 85 or 90 before we opened. And now it's kind of a slow trickle of when we can make it out and, get them in bits. But we tried to,
Yeah.
in Colorado before we left, we had been to 240. And
Wow.
so that's nothing compared to what they have now. There's so many breweries now. But I think it's really important to kind of put your money where your mouth is. Like, you love this industry, like, please come see us. And no brewery is too small, no brewery is too big. Like, everyone is worth visiting.
Yeah.
Now, whether you're going to keep going back is totally up to where you live and how you travel and things like that. Like, some of them are really far out there. But I mean, I remember even hitting Constantine Brewing one day as we were headed down to either Fort Wayne or Ohio. And I mean, we just, I mean, if you got to drive like that, that's how we get places. So
Well, that's either a hassle or the bonus. Like, they're really far out there. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how we travel all the world anyway. So we love the Michigan beer community. And I think that people were like, you're opening a brewery in Saugatuck? Like, why would you do that? Like, Saugatuck Brewing's there. And I was like, they've already reached out to us. We're good. Like, they knew that they weren't going to be the only brewery in town forever. Like, that's Mitten even opened before we did. So now there's 3 in town.
Yeah.
So everyone seemed to be really concerned for us about that. And I was like, it's going to be okay. Like, that's, our industry is not built on that sort of competition. Leave that for other industries. So we've had friends in town, which is nice because we needed a whole bunch of stuff when we first opened. Like, I had no chemicals to clean my tanks. They just didn't make it here. Our building inspection was so close to opening that I couldn't get stuff in. So Saugatuck loaned us some chemicals. I had no grain and no hops, but I had yeast on the first day of brewing because nothing showed up. Wow. So Silver Harbor traded us base malt, and I ended up bringing it back to them later. And then we did hopheads. Yeah, hopheads. We drove down to Baroda and picked up everything from their warehouse.
Wow, that's cool.
So that first day of brewing started really late. I think it was like, I don't know, 4 p.m. or something like that day. But we got it done. And I think that is a perfect example of the beer community that we want to be in. And I'm really glad it's here.
Yeah, I am too. And it's heartwarming to hear it in a pretty close to present day story, because doing a Rising Tide project, the old borrow the bag of grain sort of story is what everybody remarks on about the early days. And I just think that by and large, it's still here. It's still the brewer's code. Is we want, and it's similar to what you were saying about wanting to develop better drinkers and saying, we'll worry about what brewery later. Let's just learn to love beer more. Let's learn about what's here and how to appreciate it. I think it's similar to breweries in a community. It's like, why would we be against good breweries entering our community? It's what we've been talking about, So I think it's counterintuitive to the general public that's expecting competition and expecting exclusivity. But I think we're all welcome to more of what we love, and that includes whatever our interest is. And then seeing others thrive as well. And I just appreciate you sharing that story, because it's comforting to know that it still exists despite the thousands more breweries and the fact that there are some additional challenges these days, but it doesn't mean that that's left the community. It's important for people to hear, I think.
Yeah, it's great. I was happy to find it here too.
So, let's segue to the Michigan Brewers Guild and getting involved. I think, variations on a theme. You live in fast forward in some ways because you're a board member at this point. Tell me a little bit about your decision to get involved and what your process has been like thus far, and a little bit about, I don't know, either your role or your view on the Michigan Brewers Guild as an organization.
So like I said, I was never on the guild board or anything in Colorado, but that guild was really close, and their headquarters were in Epic. So I was always around the folks that worked for them. So I always saw value in the guild. And so coming here, I just think that guilds do so much for breweries that maybe people don't know about. So they're always out there looking for the best in our industry, like whether it's something law related or how we can better communicate it through marketing or, all the different angles. Like the guild is always there putting the message forward, like beer is worth it, craft beer is worth it, and Michigan beer is really worth it. And so always with our best interest in mind, the guild is very almost quiet behind the scenes, just like continuing to move the industry forward. So I've just found great respect in that. So I always knew that I wanted to be a part of the guild. And I think that I met Jonathan from Witch's Hat at Horrocks at like a women's event. Last year. Yep. And he was a part of the board. And I said, I'm going to sit on that board someday. You'll see. And he's like, okay, there, person I just met. Like, I'm sure we're all laughing about it now. I don't even know if he remembers it. And then 4 seats came up. And Kate and I kind of looked at each other like, well, there's never a great time. Like, you're always busy, whether you're a new brewery or an older brewery, like you're always busy. But 4 seats, like that's great. She's like, just throw your name in. I was like, all right. So, I'm kind of a sucker for a nudge. I'm like, okay, so because we work so closely together, she needs to know that I'm not going to be as present for some things because I'm going to be needed in other ways too. So it was kind of a conversation with our management team and her, and they're just like, do it. Like, if you don't get in, at least people know your name and they've heard of Guardian. And if you do get in, then hey, like get in there and make some change. So it was something I always wanted to do. The timing was just right. And I was willing to lose. Like, I thought that was okay.
Sure.
And so when they read my name during the winter conference, I could not believe it. I am so grateful for all the votes and all the support and just overwhelming support. And I will do anything I can to help our industry now and pass this. Like anything that's possible. I've told the board members, like, I'm open. I'll give you whatever time I have.
Well, and I think having having just compelling, interesting voices from people that are willing to do the work is really important to boards, and having a long-term involvement with our organization, with the Michigan Brewers Guild. I think that, any way you slice it, your perspective is really valuable, including new breweries, young breweries. And I think that's important for longevity. It's important for understanding how to serve members. So there's a whole lot of stuff. I think having, strong female voices and smaller breweries, that's huge. So I appreciate your presence on the board, and also congratulate you for being supported in it.
Thank you. I'm glad that you think so too. Because it's funny joining a board and not knowing them either.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that many people at all. So they're wonderful. They've been very welcoming and very open to hearing what I have to say, and it's been great. I mean, it's only been a few months, but it'll be pretty pivotal to see what we do from now on, because everything's different now.
Yeah, and in a few months, you got handed like the most bizarre, world-changing anvil dropped from the sky that we've ever experienced. So,
I mean, come on, based
so
on
now?
my brewing career, why not? Like, I've just had weird things happen all the way through, but not weird bad. I think that this will end up being weird good when it comes down to it.
Awesome. Well, I thought we would get to COVID and the pandemic prior to this next segment, but I think it also starts with it, so it'll be just fine. I'm conscious of time and your time as well. And so this next segment is called Last Call Questions. So it's a little more rapid fire kind of questions we want to ask everybody. And I'll just get started. The first one is, how has COVID-19 and the related regulations affected your business and your industry outlook? So it's kind of like a what now, what's going on, I think it's also an opportunity to say what's happening with Guardian and how do people access your beer and food, but also what's on your mind and how have you responded?
So I'm sure that other people have dug into their licenses and found out really what you can do with them. It can't just be us. So we found out that we can deliver beer to people, and we can sell bottles of wine to go because we have the SDM license, the designated merchant license, on top of our Class C and our brew pub. So we've been able to do a little bit more than we thought. Cool. So hopefully other people have found that too, because I don't know, that there's just so many details that we feel like we've all been playing within the same pool, and then you find out that you can do a little more. So hopefully, positively, people have found out that we can do more amongst everybody complaining about, Michigan liquor laws and things like that. There's actually a lot of play that probably most people haven't been using. So that's a good thing. For the industry as a whole, I think that quality is going to win. If you're not unique and you're not putting out a quality product, it's going to be very hard to succeed from here on out. So if you can do those two things, you don't have to be like, serving beer that is made from dirt or whatever. Like, don't have to be crazy about it, but you do need to be unique. We need to make sure that we're putting out something that is kind of fits with like Michigan beer. Like when people say Michigan beer, it holds right up with like Colorado beer and like beer from all over the world. Like when people come and talk about beer, they talk about Michigan. It's not just the other larger states closer to coasts or Colorado in the middle of the mountains. So that's cool. Like it's really great to see so much love and support. And then places like ours, like brew pubs, people have to come here to get the beer and the food and take it out and carry it out. Like we'll deliver it to you, but only a small radius. So all the places like ours that are still standing, like Fred, we've been open 7 days a week since the beginning of the shutdown because our customers are the best customers ever.
Wow.
So we are so blessed. I'm not exactly sure how we have the best customers ever, except that they are, but we're still here. Like we're scraping by, but we're still here. And that's good enough. I just want to make it through this. And so anybody out there, really worried about whether they're going to make it through, just keep connecting with your customers. Like your customers are what keep you alive at this point in time. Like talk to them, thank them, be genuine. Like now is a great time to let them know what's going on. Let them know, be honest with them. Like I've done a couple of blog posts since this began, and like I've always told our staff that we're open book and open door, and our customers, like, just we're open. Just like they really want to know how we're doing, and not like, oh, we're doing fine. Like this is the best thing ever. Like really, working 6 days a week and 10 to 14-hour days is it's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah. And having a little bit of terror along for the ride. So you're working that hard, and you're out, and we're also all looking ahead going, I don't know. We're going to do what's best, right? But there's a lot of so I think recognizing that allows people to feel connected and feel comforted by reality, and honesty are things that give us a sense of confidence versus something that doesn't ring true. So I think that's really good advice. So the next question is, the more you know, what beer style do you feel most connected to, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
I'm gonna go with porter. I keep reading that porters are in this like hard decline, and I can't understand it, because for us it's a beer that we keep on year round, because somebody, including our staff, always wants something malty no matter how hot it is outside. And a porter is kind of the perfect thing. It's not heavy, it's not super light, it's not fruity, you can do a lot with it, but you don't need to do anything with it at all. So like just a really good, in our case, a really good English porter. So it's a lot lower in alcohol, and it's not bitter, like it uses less black malt. So it's just a beautiful, perfect beer on its own. But of course, because I like to mess with things, we also do a nitro coffee vanilla version of it. And it is like, you would not even know you're drinking beer. It's beautiful.
All right. Your ideal home bar. So what's your home bar setup like? And do you have any suggestions for people who are now probably spending more time serving and enjoying beer at home?
So first thing I did was go to Sam's because they had a really nice glass front, like a beer cooler or like a pop cooler. So we have our mixers on like the top shelf because it's a short shelf. And then we have our bigger bottles on the bottom, and then, standard 16 ounce to not too tall bottles in the middle. We're able to mess around with the temperature. So it's not beer that's kept at like 30 degrees or, 32 or 33 or whatever in your home fridge. It's something that you can kind of dial in and keep a little bit warmer. So you have that. And then always have a variety of glassware. I have way too much glassware. Like, I just love glassware. So it's always like, what kind of glass do you want? Do you want stem? Do you want no stem? Do you want 4 ounce? Do you want 8? Do you want 11? Do you want 16? So I like having a good variety of stuff around. Always give your glass a good rinse with cool water before you fill it, just because there's dust in your cabinets too. It'll make that beer look even more beautiful. And when I'm not drinking beer, we have a ton of gin in our house. So the rest of our home bar is gin from all around the country, and then a little bit of tequila as well.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Love and hate. What current trends do you either love or hate or both? And how are they reflected or not in your brewery?
I'd say, and I don't know that I would have ever said this before, but being in a growing region like we are, I'm having a lot of fun playing with heritage hops that are grown. So we're about to release a beer called Saugatuck Pride, and the hops are grown in Hamilton.
Awesome.
And so local ingredients is my love, whether it's hops or fruit or barley or whatever, anything. Local ingredients, grown within like 100 miles of where we are in Michigan. Like, how lucky are we? It's strategic. It's awesome. So that's my love.
Yeah.
And I don't hate many things, but I would say my sandpaper is a good way of putting it. Right now is seltzers. I would rather see, like, I want to see them made with more quality ingredients. That is the sandpaper part of seltzers for me. This whole like pump out seltzers with cheap, scary ingredients, fruit them up, if you can even call it fruit, and pass them off for like 8 to 10 times the price. I mean, people are just making fist over fist of money of stuff that's made from crap. So that is my sandpaper.
Hear, hear.
Here, I'm like, use good ingredients, make good seltzer with good ingredients. Come on.
Yeah. First drink. What was your first drink? What, where, who, whatever you remember.
My first drink. So when I became a brewer, my aunt sent me a picture, and it's a picture of me with like a little sundress on. I think I'm like a year and a half, maybe 2. And I got a Schlitz can in my hand, and I'm just sucking whatever is left out of it.
That does seem to be the theme. You're ahead of the curve, even at 1.5. You're like, I'm gonna be about beer. I'm gonna get it started. What about your worst drink?
Oh, geez. Still to this day, I think the worst beer out there is Keystone Light. I just got ruined on that in college. I played rugby, so we just drank whatever they had, and I regret that.
Yeah. It's understandable. So, all right, last question. Who is your bucket list drinking companion? Somebody you haven't had a beer with, but you'd love to.
Oh, there are so many people. Despite the current sale, I would still love to have a beer with Kim Jordan. When I was out in Colorado, she and I crossed paths a lot because she was pretty active with New Belgium, I think as their executive director or president at the time. And I love her outlook. I love how she treats her staff as a community and what she and her husband built. And I've always looked up to her. So Kim Jordan.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me today and for all you're doing for the community and for the guild and for Beer Everywhere. Just really appreciate it. And
thanks, Fred. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. And we'll hope to see you in person soon.
Yes.
Over a bar for a beer. But
yes.
In the meantime, we connect how we can, and we'll be getting some Guardian food and drink sent this way this week.
Sweet. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Likewise, take care. Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.
Let's drink Michigan beer.